You're hereby notified that a special call meeting at the Palatka Community Redevelopment Agency has been called to be held on Monday, January 11, 2016 at our regular meeting place at City Hall, City Commission Chambers, 201 North 2nd Street, Palatka, Florida. This meeting is called to commence at 5 p.m. The purpose of the meeting is to hear a proposal regarding location of Main Street Third Friday events and to hold workshop joint planning session to discuss in more detail those common goals and issues voiced at the December workshop. This workshop shall focus on the Central Tax Increment District. We'll now have our invocation and pledge the flag. We're going to ask Commissioner Campbell if he will lead us in invocation and the pledge.
If you would, please bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this day, a day that we've never seen before you, God, your brand new grace and mercy that you bestowed upon us, God. As we commence with this meeting on tonight, God, we ask that you give us the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding for the issues that concern this city so that we may positively move it forward. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Campbell. Roll call, please.
Mayor Field.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Here. Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Norwood.
Present.
Commissioner Gorham.
Present.
Commissioner Flag.
Present.
Mr. Sam Deputy.
Present.
All accounted.
We'll now move into public comment. Public comment will be limited, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on the items that you speak on. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one here for public comment, we'll close public comment and move on to item 2 of the agenda, request for concurrence on relocation and consolidation of the Third Friday Street Party and downtown cruise into the Riverfront Park.
Mr. Chairman, where does this request come from?
That is a very good question.
It's actually a Main Street request.
Okay.
Do you,
It's an effort to put a couple of the events together to try to be more fiscally responsible and also to locate the events where it can be seen from traffic on the bridges and Main and Reed Street to hopefully draw some further attention to downtown.
Mr. Chairman, my question would be if you draw attention, which is necessary for a balance, people that's coming through to the event, how does the merchants benefit from it, or has that, are there any, is it a downside, I guess is the question.
I think the only downside is the same thing we have with any of our parties. We've got 11 blocks of merchants, and regardless of where you have a function like this, you're never going to serve all 11 blocks of the individuals. At least putting on the riverfront, the merchants along the street can still come down and perhaps put up a booth there at the event. We also do, we're doing other things for the merchants, such as we have a wine stroll coming up in a couple of weeks that I think we've now got 15 or 16 of the merchants participating in. So the folks will actually visit their stores. So, it's kind of a mix of different tasks here.
and I guess in echoing kind of the concern, I know in the past we talked about the cruisings, particularly being on the 10th Street block near Pizza Boys. I guess that would be in that area. And one of the criticisms or at least concerns raised prior to was that it didn't create any, the cruise in itself didn't spread far enough down St. John's Avenue to give benefit other than just the individuals in that area. If we move it entirely on the riverfront, are we intensifying the criticism from the past, or is the basis of it more of a cost effectiveness? And maybe you can talk to us about from a cost perspective, what the savings are.
Yeah, I think that's certainly, as I mentioned before, you're going to be taking it away from and being located directly in front of some of the businesses, but there's no way that we can set these events up to serve all 11 blocks of businesses. Now, there certainly are concentrations of businesses in different areas along that street, down on that end being one of them, down on the very east end being another, and then there are a number of businesses interspersed all the way through. So I don't think there's ever a way of satisfying, including every business that's on St. John's Avenue. Just, I don't know of any way to make that happen. Cost effectiveness is simply that we now can do this event with one permit. We've provided some promotional monies for the cruise in, I think in the amount of
Close to $400
$400 a
which will
month,
be saving.
which, you can now use those funds for other things. So we're trying to consolidate the events for that purpose.
Also, can I speak to the fact that the feedback from the cruise, and with the exception of maybe Pizza Boys, was that basically for those merchants in that block, the attendees at the cruise-in did not go into any of those shops when they remained open at night. They didn't gain anything they felt, and that was going down that block and surveying them several times and actually going to cruise-ins. Those participants in the cruise-in did not go in those shops. And that was one of the complaints or concerns of the merchants in that block, with maybe the exception of Pizza Boys, because there was food. But even with that, the cruise-in participants brought their own food and beverage, so they really didn't partake of much of that, so it really wasn't of a lot of value. We're going to be on the 100 block too. We've lastly been on the 300 block for the street party, and there really aren't any merchants open again other than Steamboat Willie's on the 300 block at night. So we do, as we talked about before, when you come to our meetings, have to do more daytime events that bring in people for that and are more family oriented, but for the evening event, that's kind of how this has worked out.
I might also mention that in the future, our intent is to probably lessen the number, decrease the number of events that we have as far as street parties, and perhaps go to a quarterly setup to where we can really put on a nice production, do it to where we can include more things, more family members, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to try to improve that. It's just kind of hard to stop right now on the spot and do it immediately. We're going to do that over a period of time.
Commissioner Moore.
You did get the consensus of everybody in the DPI area for all of the businesses that's downtown? You got consensus from those guys before you made your decision?
Because we didn't poll all the members of DPI and all the merchants, no, absolutely not. We talked to some of those merchants in the blocks where these events had been historically occurring, but not the whole 11 blocks, if that's what you're asking, regarding this particular event. I think we need to have other events, and I think Sam's going to speak to that.
And the other question is to, if you did have it down at the riverfront, again, the timing of your events, and then how traffic or the signage or the marketing piece of how you're getting traffic to the event. Do you have anything out on 17-3 that points to the event?
City ordinance doesn't always allow some of that signage there, so that's another conundrum. We don't have the wayfinding signage. We need to get people downtown. We're trying to work within the parameters of what we have now. We need to work on some of our city ordinances. That's you folks, not me. So I think that's another issue.
Something like a temporary, if it was to pass the board, something even as if it was temporary.
I have to look at the ordinance, then I think that's not,
I think that's something that
that's
we would have to
iffy.
defer to.
Okay.
That's a
We got-
conversation for another.
Okay.
Mr. Deputy.
Mr.
Mr. Deputy.
My question then is going to be, well, one, to the previous question, no, that didn't come before DPI. But to your question, or my question to you is, for what purpose is this event, especially if you move it to that location? What's the purpose of it?
The purpose would be the same that it's always been, to draw attention to downtown Palatka. And downtown,
Okay, so then why wouldn't you use a spot that's neutral, like the courthouse that's in the middle, visible from the highway, and is in the middle of all of the businesses, versus going to one end?
Sam, I'm sorry, I should have waited. Part of the reason we're moving is because of the visibility, but the other part is a lot of the people who are on the, like let's say 3rd Street, we can't put vendors in front of their places.
Okay, but like my block, my block is historically full, Right now, we have one opening and only one side to the block. So the other side has no businesses, it just has a parking lot. But yet I have never had an event from Main Street on my block.
Right.
And I'm in the 600, which is almost dead center. Now, I'm not saying I would be open because, one, small business, I'm a print shop, I'm a business-to-business place. But maybe if it was even rotated, I would be open for the month that it's on my block if it was a rotation. But for what purpose would it be on the riverfront? And is it a fundraiser for Main Street, or is it not a
Let me tweak that a
fundraiser?
little bit. This is not going to be on the riverfront. It's going to be on the 100 block. Now, are we going to use riverfront as well? Yeah, but it's really on the 100 block. And, you're putting it in front of the hotel, you're putting it in front of the future development, which is the riverfront block, or, excuse me, what's over there on the 100 block?
I just feel very strongly that the
But at
C.R.A.
any rate, it's increasing visibility, but we could put it on the 100 block, we could put it on the 400 block, we could put it on the 700 block. Somebody's going to have a problem with it because it's not on the block.
I understand
So-
that. I just
so-
feel
so the
very
conversation
strongly.
is not on my block, I hear that all the
Okay,
time.
okay, stop. Go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead, Mr.
I feel very strong, well, one, Jerry, is this a fundraiser for Main Street, or is this just an activity?
No, it's a fundraiser.
It's a fundraiser, so the C.R.A. is paying the bills, but it's a fundraiser for Main Street.
Well, it's both.
It's both. Okay, I'm lost on that answer. It's a fundraiser, and we're paying, and the C.R.A. is paying the bill.
The event was originally set up as a draw for downtown.
Correct.
A fundraiser thing is a secondary thing, and certainly
Okay.
we're gonna raise funds if we can.
Okay.
But the intent of the event itself was to draw people downtown.
To
Commissioner
benefit the businesses.
Commissioner Norwood.
I guess my question is, why wasn't DPI a part of the decision-making process?
I don't have an answer for that one. Why wasn't DPI part of the decision-making process?
Because we don't have part of the decision-making process, Sam, just to be honest with you, for DPI events. You don't run those by Main Street.
Right, no,
and
no,
fairness,
I-
I mean, I think we need to keep that in
I
mind.
just answered the question, I didn't say it needed to be, I just answered the question that it had not gone
There
to
is
us.
also a member of DPI that serves on
Right.
our board, so
But-
there is
I guess-
representation.
But this goes directly to why we're here today, because there is no consensus, there's no mode of communication, so we can get certain things in place. But the concern, I think, is a valid concern, because one of the issues we've had with events is, one of the true purposes of events, I would think, is to create walking opportunities so that people can have impulse buying chances for consumers. If we take it and we polarize it and place it on one side at the Riverfront Park, which is what the request says, it doesn't say the 100 block. If we place it at the Riverfront Park, then what we've done is we further decrease the opportunities to have individuals come in and to create those shopping opportunities for vendors. The other thing that happens is, it also goes back to what we talked about previously, which is how do we have set hours, or at least create events so that they coincide with the hours of operation, or create special hours of operation so that the vendors benefit. At the end of the day, if we're not creating additional traffic for vendors, then the event's a waste of time. That's just my opinion.
Well,
And that's kind of where we are. Commissioner Black had a comment, and I'll let him go.
Well, I think we obviously, just hearing the back and forth, there is some dysfunction and some disconnect that's involved. And I think, as you were saying, the purpose of the workshop is for refocusing and to make sure that there is compliance with the legal components of why each entity has to do what has to be done, whether we're talking C.R.A., whether we're talking the city of Palatka, whether we're talking Main Street, DPI, so forth and so on. There's overlap in what each of these entities need in order for downtown to be successful economically. But at the end of the day, there are some parameters that you can't just have a dream or a pie in the sky idea and it comply with the model that is set. So we can't make rules as we go there. I think that wherever the dysfunction is, those infectious spots have to be treated and dealt with. But it just sounds like we're touching some nerves right up in here right now.
Let's take a point of privilege, and let's move item number 2, further discussion of item number 2 until we complete item 3. and we can, and maybe the information gathered from that will put us in a position where we can further deal with that item. Is there any concern with doing that?
I would just like to make one other comment, if I could. The whole purpose of the Main Street program is not focused on one event. We try to do a number of different types of events. We have 2 events a year that in fact involve any business that wants to participate. We're having wine strolls. We've got one coming up in 2 weeks. By the way, I've got tickets available for that with me. But we've got one coming up in 2 weeks, which is an opportunity for everybody in this city to purchase a ticket and go visit each one of those stores and go through them, see what their products and wares are, and enjoy a wine tasting event. So it's a combination of events. It's not a single event like a street party. So we've got to do our planning based on that. It's a very wide-scoped purpose.
Mr. Chairman, to piggyback off of that, again, we have to always be mindful of our funding sources. Whoever's paying the piper, whatever regulations that govern the money, or the flow of the money, or the source of the money, each entity that is a recipient or beneficiary of that have to be mindful of that at all times. Otherwise, further down the road, there will be some consequences.
Well, actually, first question that probably ought to be asked each time one of these things comes up is, what part of the C.R.A. plan does this further, right?
Correct.
And
Yes,
Doesn't comply.
and there's, I'll hold mine for the workshop.
And so again, by general consent, are we fine with moving this item down?
Yes,
And
sir.
dealing with it at the end of the meeting?
Yes.
We will move on to item number 3, our workshop joint planning session with Downtown Palatka Inc. and Palatka Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
Just 1 second, Mom. If anybody else wants to join us at the table, you can join. We got material around the table as well. If you want to move forward and join us at the table, you're welcome to do so at this time.
Okay, we have until 6:30, so I want to be able to move as quickly on some things that are not as a top priority, to the things that are. And I also don't want to assume what that is, so very quickly what I'm going to do is go through what were the top priorities of everything. I don't know if y'all got the summary that I put together and sent out. If you don't have it, the city can provide you a copy. I'm not going to go through all of that, because you can read that on your own if you weren't here, but there's a few items that were critical, so those are the ones I want to spend time with, because we've got some other things to talk about. Wayfinding was brought up. Actually, okay. Before we get into this, I need to make a clarification, and I'm not going to get into the minutia of it. The mayor and the city manager and I can do it in a agency meeting. But there's a massive misunderstanding that's been going on for years. And I even took Cody Boynton, the former city manager, and Jim Lee, the former planning director, to the state in Tallahassee. And we spoke with the Main Street Florida program manager, because what I was telling everyone they weren't listening to. So I said, I'm just going to take you to the water myself. And it confirmed everything I've been saying. Somehow that's been lost, and things that shouldn't be happening are happening, and I'm listening to them, and it's just terrifying me. Main Street program has nothing to do with the C.R.A. It can support efforts that may benefit the C.R.A. if they want to, but these are totally different programs. Main Street cannot receive any funding from C.R.A. tip dollars. It has to be total grassroots, total nonprofit, not funded by the city, not funded by tip dollars. It has to operate and function on its own accord for its own purposes, and if you don't know what those are, I can provide you with all that information. We don't have time to go through that. But this merging of the efforts and the funds is dangerous. Please cease doing that. Main Street is this. C.R.A. is this. They are not the same. They are not the same animal of any kind. And if the Main Street wants to do something that just coincidentally happens to benefit what the C.R.A. plan asked for, that's fine, because you may have some joint efforts where Main Street may have similarities in their mission as well. But as far as operations and procedures, no. So I'm done with that. I won't get into that anymore unless I'm
I've got
asked.
one other question though. Does that also include funding the Main Street Director?
Absolutely.
Make sure.
I'm sorry, I've got to follow up with that. What statute or rule?
I will provide that for you. I will send you all that. I wasn't prepared to get into that tonight. The little direction that I got about today was what the mayor asked me to do, which is focus on what the priorities are, next steps moving forward. But sitting here listening to that, I had to make a comment. So I'll be happy to offline, if you want to call me, I will give you that information as well as the connections so you can become more educated on the law.
I'd like to be educated on the law.
Good. I would like you to be too. Okay, so let's get into this. Better signing, better wayfinding. That's something that was in the plan. It sounds simple. It sounds like it's not that important, signs. But the thing is, people that are cars or pedestrians, people that aren't familiar, driving through Reed Street being this, what we call a vehicular tube, is channeling people from one area to the other, and they're missing that exposure to your other main street, which is really your St. John's Avenue. So traffic calming, unsynchronizing the lights was something we talked about, because you don't want to help support people to get the hell through Palatka, okay? You want to stop them, slow them down, and the wayfinding comes in because this beautiful street that's just one block over, people don't realize it's there. So we were talking about gateways and all those things. So signage may sound flimsy, but it's extremely important, and it has to be done. There's a science to it. It can't just be, let's make a pretty sign, let's pick this color. No, it's about placement. It's about lettering, font size. It's about, timing of how fast at 35 miles an hour with all green lights, what can I see? What am I going to miss? I mean, there's DOT, trust me, they all go through this. What can you see in that second? Billboard signs, they all do the science about it. So, and if you want to respond, feel free, but we need to move quickly. I'm going to move on to the next one. And it piggybacks on this. Reed Street lighting, that was discussed. Commissioner Flagg, I believe that you actually, did you lead a little charge on the fact that there was other cities that had been receiving support, but Palatka has not after numerous requests? And how do we follow? How would the city follow up on that?
It's not a matter of numerous requests. It was just a matter of raising the issue and how do we get traction on it when it's happening. They are upgrading and revising or modernizing, I guess would be the better word, the lighting in more of the urban areas. It's almost like it's expected and it's happening without any push.
Okay.
But it seems the rural needs.
So I'm going to charge the mayor and the city manager, that's something that you do administratively, is to reach out to the providers for those and talk about funding, talk about plans, find out where you are on this list of improvements. That is a COP thing. Okay. Any other discussion on lighting? No. Okay. All right. All throughout the workshop, there was one thing that kept being repeated, and I think it's one of the three most important things we're going to talk about tonight. And that is the fact of exposure to information education, sharing of that information, and not using simplified methods of notification, because not everybody gets their mail or reads their mail, or they think it's junk mail, they chuck it. Not everybody has internet, not everybody uses a computer. So there's a lot of ways in smaller towns that people find out. They find out by church, they find out in the park and events, they find out by walking and knocking, they find out by neighbor associations. So these are methods by which these functions and this education needs to be shared in alternative locations, the place where people in this town actually congregate regularly, instead of using traditional methods, because we're not in a traditional situation. So we can't keep treating Palatka and our audience the way other cities do, because that's just not who we are. So that's really important. I'm going to say that over and over again throughout the hour. Okay, something that we talked about years ago, and Conrad actually brought it back up because it needs to be addressed, and it's a pretty simple fix. And that is the fact that we have residential properties located in the North Historic District, and I think the south as well. The south as well, but the CBD has residential properties, and there are no goals, objectives, or priorities for those. Therefore, it could be misconstrued that funding may not be able to be used for these properties, and the best way to do that is to just make an amendment, to add some of those priorities and those goals. And they may already exist in some of the other sections planned, and you can just duplicatively put them in. That could be an administrative task as recommendation from the agency to the commission type it up, boom, we're done. So that's easy stuff. That's, yeah, we don't want to waste time and money on something that we can do like that. Any other discussion on that?
Who's
Conrad?
responsible to do that?
That would be the city. And, you know, unfortunately, everybody has to wear a lot of hats. So whoever the city manager wants to assign staff-wise to be able to handle that, if that's that and his staff, that's where the plan lives.
I like accountability.
Exactly, and that's why the task
Yeah.
put him on it.
All right.
So, Conrad?
Just one thing,
Maybe it's
I think it sort of happened over time, and it's not something this commission did. But I think part of the problem might be that with the board governing CBD, the way it was put together originally, because basically the board that makes decisions on how to spend the money, if we look at the board, it's got 5 representatives from the city, it's got 1 representative from the county, it's got 1 representative from DPI, and that's it. Nobody else has got a voice at the table. So maybe that's something that should be looked at as well in the future.
Okay. Any other comments on those parcels? Okay. Jonathan, how many years ago was this very minute little rebranding thing effort done?
2011, I believe.
And you said that that effort resulted in a what?
Didn't result in a marketing strategy. It was basically a logo, a tagline, a brand Bible.
And when you say brand Bible, I know what that is, but what did you get? What did you pay for?
Basically, color palette, typography, text, instructions on how to use the logo, how not to use the logo, supporting narrative for basically the premise for the brand, and some example ads and promotional material.
Okay, because the 3 biggest...
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
What was the tag?
Palatka, it's our nature.
That can go both ways. Sorry, I have no filter. Okay, and that leads me to 3 things that are extremely important that you really won't be successful until we deal with these 3 things. You're not going to raise rents, you're not going to make more money, you're not going to hire more people, you're not going to open more businesses until you deal with 3 things. Those 3 things are people, perception, and place. People. Who's your audience? Mr. Mayor, you and I talked about this when we first met for a couple hours. Audience, audience, audience. I still don't really believe that everybody in the business community understands who their audience is. I mean, do you know who really lives here? Who's really spending money here? I really think part of the update to the C.R.A. plan has to look at the fact that you've got to be really providing services and products for the people that actually live here on a regular neighborhood service daily basis. The tourism dollars, those will come and go with seasons or events, but you cannot sustain anything on that. So knowing who your audience is, knowing your socioeconomic, who lives here, who are your customers. I still really believe you guys don't understand what that is, and I think we need to help you get that information. Not just quantitative, which is data. I'm talking qualitative too. Because there's things people want, but you can't measure that in a survey. But at the end of the day, you can't capture any of this and help anybody or yourselves unless you know who your audience is.
Just one quick question. How wide of a target can you have? Are we
We're
talking
talking about the C.R.A. plan.
Okay, so we're talking
But-
just the
No.
surrounding
Well,
community?
He's talking about the
That's a
audience.
great point. The audience being, there's 4 categories. Local, we'll go ahead and call that in the boundary.
Okay.
Then there's countywide, which is people in west side, north side, you know, folks that should be coming here more regularly, but aren't because they're going to wherever else they're going. And then you've got the region, Northeast Florida, and then your 4th category are the folks that are passing by, passing through, you know, snowbirds, tourists, what have you. So those 4 different groups have 4 totally different needs, and the one that's going to save you is the first group, because they live here. Ma'am? Oh, she's saying, heck yeah. So that's critical. Perception. Do you realize there's people that tell jokes about West Virginia that have never been to West Virginia? I bet you everybody in here has heard one or told one. And I don't know how many people here have been to West Virginia. Okay. Guess what? That happens to downtown Jacksonville, and that happens to Palatka, and a lot of places in this country. People have never been here, and they have this misconceived perception. That's killing you. That's where this branding comes in. That's where you should be working, not with your Putnam County Chamber alone, but the regional chambers, the St. Augustine Beaches chambers, the Jacks Chamber, Clay County, Baker, the whole region, and your regional council. Because until you change the perception, and that resident who keeps passing on the minutia that doesn't know what they're talking about, they're perpetuating a myth. And you've got to put